An oil spill is the release of a liquid petroleum hydrocarbon into the environment. Oil spills usually occur in the oceans or coastal waters, but it may also occur on land. This human activity is a form of pollution and may happen for several reasons.
An oil spill is a catastrophic event in the environment. It can negatively affect both plants and wildlife. It also causes human suffering and economic losses.
Oil spills could be caused by accidents and by equipment's breakdown.
They may also occur when oil tankers have equipment faults, which is really rare. Major oil spills are caused by nature and human activities on land. The leaks happen through accidents with products using petroleum or various forms of oil used on land, and the oil is later washed off into water bodies. Other causes of oil spills are spills by petroleum users of released oil, which happens when water vehicles like jet skis, motorboats, or yachts leak fuel.
Oil spills can be caused by people making mistakes or simply by being careless. Major oil spills happen when transporting oil in big transporting containers. Oil could also be spilled during transfer operation and various uses. It can also be spilled through leaks, which take place in the storage tanks. The containers may be stored underground or above ground, and over time, the containers may develop leaks.
A mixture of hydrocarbons with thick dirty used oil is called crude oil. When this toxic mixture is exposed to the water bodies, a number of physical and chemical changes occur. At the first stage, the several inches thick layer of oil floats at the water surface, which is moved by water currents and wind. Then the component separates, making it easier to spread into surrounding water and eventually disperse into the atmosphere. Oil spills affect organisms in the water bodies, especially the ones that do not have protective coverings or the shells. Many organisms are vulnerable to the poisonous toxic substances and may be directly killed. These toxic components may also be passed in the food chain or directly absorbed through gills of fish or the larger marine organisms. Toxins contaminate their tissue and they're killed.
The thick layer of oils on the surface blocks the sunlight from reaching the plants within the body of water. Without the sunlight, plants will lack the energy to undergo the process of photosynthesis, which result in their death.
It damages the water, the ocean, the lakes, the beaches. This is in one regard. The other regard, it kills a lot of animals, where dolphins getting killed, or ducks, or other animals.
Oil spills, well, those poor animals will die. It will affect the whole ecosystem that we have, and consequently it will affect not just the food chain, for example, the fish that we eat, but it will have a knock-on effect for all of the living organisms within the sea, and particularly near shores.
Plants and animals can be harmed both from internal exposure to chemical substances from oil spills through ingestion or inhalation, and from external exposure through skin and eye irritation. Oil can also smother some small species of fish or invertebrates and coat feathers and fur, reducing birds and mammals' ability to maintain their body temperatures. Since most oil floats The creatures most affected by oil are animals like sea otters and seabirds that are found on sea surface or on shorelines if the oil comes ashore. During most oil spills, seabirds are harmed and killed in greater numbers than other kinds of creatures. Sea otters can easily be harmed by oil, since their ability to stay warm depends on their fur remaining clean. Fuel oils such as gasoline and diesel fuel are very light oils. Light oils are very volatile, they evaporate relatively quickly, so they usually don't remain for long in the aquatic or marine environment, typically no longer than a few days. If they spread out on the water, as they do when they are accidentally spilled, they will evaporate relatively quickly. However, while they are present, light oils present two significant hazards. First, some can ignite or explode. Second, many light oils such as gasoline and diesel are also considered to be toxic. They can kill animals or plants that they touch.
The treatment of oil spill costs a lot of money. We're talking about in millions, and that can vary from one damage to another.
Skimming is a process that removes oil from the sea surface before it reaches sensitive areas along the coastline. Sometimes, two boats will tow a collection boom, allowing oil to concentrate within the boom, where it was then picked up by a skimmer. The success of a skimming operation is dependent on something known as the encounter rate. Much like a vacuum picks up dirt from your carpet, a skimmer has to come in direct contact with the oil in order to remove it from the surface, and even then, it will still pick up some water. That's why responders will often refer to the volume of oil removed via skimming as gallons of oil water mixture. Skimmers are devices that attract oil to their surfaces before transferring it to a collection tank, often on a boat. Ideal conditions for skimming are during the day when the oil slick is thick and the ocean surface is fairly calm. Oil spills can be extremely hazardous and environmentally threatening, and need to be contained and cleaned as soon as possible. There are four basic ways to clean or contain oil spills, and workers determine the most appropriate method depending on the location of the spill, potential hazards, weather conditions, waves, and chemical dispersants can be used to break down the oil and speed up its natural biodegradation. Dispersants break the slick into droplets of oil, which makes it easier for the oil and water to mix, and for the slick to be absorbed into the aquatic system. This method is not appropriate for all oil spills, and especially not in all locations. Dispersants cannot be used when it can affect marine organisms. Oil spills can also be removed by adding biological agents to the spill. Oil that has washed up along the shoreline can be broken down through a process called biodegradation. Biodegradation occurs when bacteria and other microorganisms break down the oil into harmless substances such as fatty acids and carbon dioxide. Cleanup crew can speed up this process of biodegradation by adding fertilizing nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus, which encourages the growth of microorganisms. The easiest way is to let the oil break down naturally. If there is no possibility that the oil will pollute coastal regions or marine life, the oil can be left to disperse naturally. The sun, wind, currents, and waves can disperse and evaporate most oils, though light oils can disperse quicker than heavy ones.
Even though oil spills are treated, the water body is still contaminated.
The treatments will not be done 100%.
Oil spills destroy ecosystems and kills wildlife, but people's health is directly affected too. Oil is semi-volatile, which means that it can evaporate into the air and create a heavy vapor that stays near the ground, in the human breathing zone. When winds whip up oily seawater, the spray contains tiny droplets, basically a fume, of oil which are small enough to be inhaled deep into the lungs. We know that's happening in Sea Gulf Coast because people are reporting a heavy oily smell in the air. Already, my colleagues in Louisiana are reporting the people in the coastal community. Oil contains petroleum hydrocarbons, which are toxic and irritating to the skin and airways. It also contains volatile chemicals called VOCs, which can cause acute health effects such as headaches and dizziness. Over the long term, many of these chemicals have been linked to cancer, so there are a lot of reasons to worrying about inhaling them.
Through oil spills, we are limiting our food sources since we can't consume toxic food, like fish that has been contaminated.
Oil spills is not an easy issue. It's a pretty major that affects the environment. It could affect the humans, could affect animals, plants. All these categories. It's a major issues. We are talking about toxic substance that have a lot of risk on our health.
The world consumes more than 3.5 billion gallons of oil each day. 60% of the oil reaches its destination by the sea. An oil spill that forced swimmers off Saadiyat Island beaches in February 2014 was caused by a discharge of ballast water from an unknown vessel, the Environment Agency said. The oil came ashore on February 14 along St. Regis Saadiyat Island Resort Beach and the Hayat Park Hotel Beach on the island. A team from the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi EAD visited the site, collected water samples for analysis, and investigated the cause of the spill. Dr. Hamed Al-Kindi, manager of the Emergency Management Environment Quality Section at EAD, announced that they had completed their investigation. He said, a discharge of ballast water was the most portable identified source of the minor oil spill. Ballast water can have a negative impact on marine environment and typically contain a variety of biological materials that may include non-native or exotic species, Dr. Al-Kindi said. These materials can cause extensive ecological damage to aquatic ecosystems.